we're working through the simultaneous translation. That is our goal for future webinars, that we will have that available. It's very important to us to be a bilingual organization and to have that functionality and that engagement available to all of you. So once again, thank you for joining us. We're so excited just looking through the list to see so many of you back to join us a second time. In lieu of the first Canadian Mentoring Symposium 2020, we're hosting a series of webinars, community conversations across Canada, exploring important topics about building a mentoring movement in Canada. It's been an incredibly busy few weeks for us lately. Many of us are working with children, with little humans at home. It's very exciting. Many of us are worried about loved ones in our community. We know there's so much going on, and we wanted to thank all of you for making time to join with us today. And thank you for your patience in this process, and thank you for engaging with us as we move ahead. The Canadian Mentoring Partnership is a convener. As our Managing Director, Stacey Dakin, said in our first webinar, part of participating through this developmental evaluation process means taking the time to convene together, to listen, to work. We are starting this dialogue and this national conversation with our peers across Canada, and we know that new answers and new approaches will emerge from these research-informed conversations. So we are being responsive, we're being agile, we're adapting to the needs of the sector and adapting our plans with your engagement and feedback, and keeping in mind the physical distancing requirements. For those of you who are not on our first webinar, March 25th, I just want to share with you very briefly about the Canadian Mentoring Partnership. We are working together to support youth mentoring in Canada. Our mission is expanding access to mentoring to help every young person fulfill their potential. Mentoring we define as the presence of a caring individual who provides support, advice, friendship, reinforcement, and constructive role modeling over time. We do our work primarily through 4 pillars: research, technology, partnerships, and communications. To learn more about our work or to connect with us on social media, please like, follow, tag, upvote us, whatever platform you use to help us share the news and raise our profile. We ask that any insights you gain from today's webinar that you want to share on social media, please use the hashtag Power of Mentoring, or hashtag Pouvoir de Mentorat. We love to hear about and amplify stories about how you're adapting right now to the COVID crisis, how you're maintaining caring relationships, how you're supporting our young people in person, online, over text, other formats, whatever you're doing to support our youth. We're curious, and we'd love to hear more and help amplify your stories and inspire others across Canada. As a rapid response exercise a few weeks ago, we put out a quick survey in our newsletter to ask how you are adapting, what supports do you need, what can we do together, and what assets you have to share, and we invite you to fill out this survey. The link is available on our social media. More formally, we're excited to announce that in partnership with SRDC, the State of Mentoring Youth Survey is now available online. We need your help in circulating this survey and helping us map the experiences of Canadian youth aged 18 to 30. You can visit mentoringcanada.ca/state of mentoring for more information. So we have a couple of exciting webinars coming up that we've booked. The next one is focused on research. Research was one of the most engaging conversations that we had on March 25th. There were lots of questions, and this is going to be a deep dive into growing the Canadian evidence base for quality mentoring. We also have an exciting conversation coming up on May 6th about partnerships, designing a national collaborative. So I would invite you to visit mentoringcanada.ca/events and figure out if you can attend those. If you knew others who could attend those, we'd certainly appreciate your help spreading the word and attending. So today, our topic is virtual mentoring tools. The format will be an introduction from our panelists. They'll be sharing an overview of their experience, their expertise, their research with virtual mentoring. There'll be a few questions from myself that I'll be pulling from our team and the other panelists, and then I'll be sharing questions from the audience. So if you'd like to ask questions, you'll see in the Zoom bar, there's a Q&A function. You can click those Q&A bubbles, the 2 little speech bubbles, and you can type in your questions. That allows me to, as the moderator, to help ask the questions to the panel. So please do engage through this process and help. So Stacy Dakin has just responded in the chat for our French friends that we're going to have a teleconference option happening concurrently. The details will be shared in the chat, and we're going to get the translator set up on there. So thank you again for everybody for your patience. So our goals for the conversation here today are, we want all of you to become a little bit better informed about virtual mentoring. We wanted to create a space for you to be able to ask questions and hear responses from the experts. We wanted to create a space where all of us could get curious, we could engage, and we could think about this going forward. We know it's an adaptation by necessity. This is a lot faster than a lot of us had anticipated, and we're doing our best to help you get real-time answers. Our panelists today, we have Adrian Katz, the Senior Director of Information Technology at the Canadian Mentoring Partnership, Catherine Legare from the President and Founder for Academos, Kate Schroeth, the Executive Director of I Could Be, Aaron Jyoti Gupta, Founder and CEO of Mentor Together, Michelle Kaufman, Assistant Professor with the Bloomberg School of Public Health at Johns Hopkins University, Kevin O'Neill, Associate Professor, Faculty of Education at Simon Fraser University, and a special thank you, Kate. We know you're in New York, and it's very trying times right now there. So thank you so much for making time to be with us. And Aaron Jyoti, you're in India, and you're staying up late at night to share with us today too. So we're especially thankful to both of you for still being able to weather the storm and join us here today. And of course, to all of our panelists, we're so thankful that you made the time today and made yourself available to over 300 mentoring leaders in Canada. So I'd like to introduce Adrian to share some remarks and help frame the conversation today.
Thank you, Michael. Hi, everybody. I'm Adrian, Senior Director of Information Systems at the Canadian Mentoring Partnership. Again, thanks everybody for joining us. It's a pretty interesting time, and virtual mentoring, or e-mentoring, has become a pretty hot topic. Michael, if you wouldn't mind jumping right in. So I think it's important to explain how we got here. So the proposal that resulted in creating and financing the Canadian Mentoring Partnership contained, amongst several, a key deliverable of increasing e-mentoring opportunities across Canada. That was in response to a youth survey where youth identified a need to be met in the places and spaces they are, and particularly for increased access to online and virtual mentoring opportunities. So the CMP was given a mandate to apply its resources to increasing the availability of e-mentoring. And although our mandate hasn't changed, obviously circumstances have changed the way that we're planning to bring that mandate to fruition. And what we have to be, obviously, is a bit more agile, and we are exercising our ability to respond to what is a rapidly evolving landscape and to adapt our plans. So what are these plans? The plans essentially involve you folks. First, I'd like to talk a little bit about one key aspect in the discussion about e-mentoring, and it's the division of platform and program. So don't worry, I'm not sick. I just have allergies, so normal coughing. There are two different things that we're going to be talking about, I hope. And generally, there seems to be a bit of, I wouldn't say confusion, but a little bit of overlapping in the way people conceptualize the delivery of mentoring online. So there are two different things that kind of exist in the world of e-mentoring. One of them are e-mentoring programs, and those are just mentoring programs that are delivered online. And then there's e-mentoring platforms. So an e-mentoring platform is a tool or a set of software functions that can be used by a mentoring program to bring their content and the interaction between mentor and mentee online. So the difference really is that one is a set of software that you use to create a new mentoring program or to transition an existing in-person program into a blended service delivery paradigm or an entirely virtual interaction, versus an e-mentoring program where a service provider has already set up a program using a particular platform. So when we go about looking at the landscape or the environment of e-mentoring, sometimes we can get caught looking at a program that exists where mentors and mentees are already being connected in a very particular or structured way online, and think that we can necessarily find a way to use the platform or the tools that are implementing that program. But that's not always the case. Some e-mentoring program providers do make their platforms and the content of their programs available, delivery by other service providers. But generally, if you're looking to transition to an online space, a set of tools needs to be made available to do that. And those digital tools or systems may be designed from scratch, or they may be customized combinations of off-the-shelf products. So if we go back to the adaptation of CMP's plans, next slide, please, Michael. We have always had the intent and the mandate to move forward with increasing the availability of tools and resources to expand the capacity for online mentoring. And what we've found ourselves having to do recently is accelerate these plans to where we are looking at the delivery of a platform, which is a tool, a set of tools or a system that can be used by service providers to continue their programs and the interactions of their mentors and mentees online. So in the first webinar that we had, I feel like it was a year ago, but it was on the 25th of March. Sorry, we asked the question to the participants, several hundred of you, to maintain continuity of mentoring relationships, what type of e-mentoring system would assist you now? And these are the results. So of respondents, and I think about 100 service providers answered the poll, the majority or the primary way that service providers wanted to allow their mentees and mentors to connect was over video, followed by a chat-based system, and then the more commonly used systems already, phone and email. Next slide, please. So back a couple of weeks ago, you told us what it is that you wanted to see. And this is a slide that was actually used partly in that March 25th webinar and has been adapted for the reality we're in now, where we're accelerating what was supposed to be a 2-year project of working with the community to collectively build and define an offering of virtual tools, but that we have accelerated. And our goal is over the next few months to provide a very basic system that will allow existing programs to continue being able to allow their mentors and mentees in existing matches to connect in a safe space online over video and chat, the two top modes of communication that were requested, and to work with Canadian service deliverers to figure out how best to onboard their staff, mentors, and mentees into this platform, and also what types of additional training is required by those three stakeholders in order to make this effective and safe. There are a number of criteria which are guiding the development and implementation of this platform. And I'd like to point out very clearly that this is a minimally viable product. We're looking to create a baseline right now to address the immediate needs in the sector, to deliver this for free, and to make sure that it follows certain security and privacy requirements, that it's easy to use, and that as the CMP moves forward along with you over the next couple of years, we are continuing, just in a slightly different way, to invite the sector in to discuss and guide us in how to build up that platform along the lines of what we were hoping to do over the longer 2-year period. So this is a foundational introductory piece that we will then work together to build on over the next few years. To get this off the ground, we need your help. And Tracy Luca Huger, the Director of Partnership Network, we're working on the title, is going to explain a little bit about an ask that we have of you folks. Tracy.
Okay, thanks, Adrian. As many of you are aware from our last webinar, the Canadian Mentoring Partnership is a collective impact initiative. And especially during these times of uncertainty, CMP is committed to adapting and providing an agile e-mentoring platform and resource. And so we would like to facilitate and convene participants to continue this conversation that we're starting today, to engage in a collaborative platform discussion, and to become early adopters in building out this platform by joining an e-mentoring working group that we are going to host and convene. We're looking for a diverse group of service providers representing different regions across the country, urban, rural, remote settings, as well as a diversity in size and scope of your mentoring programs and services. And so we really want to host a deep dive discussion on helping to build out this platform that will truly meet the needs of service providers, hear about your concerns, and pay attention to how we can best support mentoring relationships in this interim and then building into the future. So unfortunately, due to technology constraints, we're needing to limit it to 100 participants. But we really want to engage you and ask you to be involved in a task force working group around developing this platform, the deployment of it, the onboarding of both and training of both staff, mentors, and mentees to support your programs, but also to support your existing match relationships. And so we are going to start this fairly soon. We know there is an urgency in the field to have a platform that is dynamic and agile during these times. And so we are wanting to start this next week. Maybe Michael, I can ask you to flip to the next screen or the next slide. So we're wanting to host 4 different sessions starting next Thursday, April 16th at 1 o'clock Eastern Time. We will also send out a link following this webinar for registration, but certainly also if you have any questions or any concerns about it or just want some follow-up information, please don't hesitate to reach out to me and shoot me an email. But we, again, like I said, we will send this out next following this webinar with a link, and we hope that you will join us. Back to you, Michael.
Awesome, thank you for that. So we're just gonna take a pause here just for a second to try again on the interpretation. So I'm just going to, before we go to Michelle, I just want to step out for a second here and see if I can add an additional interpreter. So Merlin, under Stacy Dakin, are you able to try the translation now on the French channel?
No, Madeline, we can't hear you.
Oh, I thought I heard her.
They're hearing you through my desk phone. So no, we're not hearing you through Zoom, unfortunately.
How about now? Can you hear me on Zoom?
No.
Okay.
So Michael, I don't think it's going to work. We're trying to do it just for everybody on the phone. We were trying to do it through the teleconference. The issue is being connected to Zoom and teleconference. So I have a feeling it's not going to work today, unfortunately, but we've put a half an hour into it and I think we need to cut our losses.
All right. Well, again, thank you so much to everyone for trying. We did do a pilot run earlier this week, and it worked wonderful. So the potential is there. Don't know why it didn't click today, but it does allow for us to have multiple languages, multiple channels, and it is fantastic. So it's something that we endeavor to do for future, and we'll continue there. So just jumping back to the presentation here. I'm sorry, Tracy, was there anything else you wanted to add? Then just for...
No, I'm good, Michael. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, so for those of you, as Tracy said, who want to engage, we'll be sending out this link after the fact. This is to a Zoom meeting for next Thursday, April 16th at 1 p.m. Eastern. I'm very excited to kick off our panel with Michelle Kaufman, Associate Professor at the Bloomberg School of Public Health, Johns Hopkins University. She is a social psychologist by training. She studies the intersection of technology and health for youth with a focus on digital mentoring and social media. She is also a member of the research board of the National Mentoring Resource Center in the United States. And Dr. Kaufman has been conducting research on mentoring for over a decade and considers herself an early adopter of technology. So Dr. Michelle Kaufman, would you like to, should be able to unmute your mic and take the floor.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so thank you for inviting me to this. I was very excited to receive an invitation. As you can all imagine, it's a very interesting time to be at Johns Hopkins right now. And so things have been crazy busy, but I'm glad I was able to make time for this. So if you want to go to the next slide. So as was mentioned, my area of expertise is in the intersection of youth and technology and social media and how we can use all of the new digital tools that are available and that are so popular among young people to improve mentoring. And I'll talk a little bit about what we're doing with my own research and then what I've been doing in terms of turning research into practice. But this is a recent slide that I showed to my graduate students from a survey in the US where it just shows the ubiquitousness of using social media and digital technology, the popularity among young people. Next slide. So, my question in my research and a lot of the work I do is how can we use digital technology to enhance mentoring? And before the pandemic broke out, my group was really looking at how can we use technology to enhance in-person mentoring relationships. You can go to the next slide. We've been doing this by developing an app for mentors that really gives them the resources to talk about sensitive health issues. I'm in a school of public health, so a lot of the outcomes I'm interested in are things like adolescent substance use, risky sexual behavior, mental health outcomes of young people. And so we continue to develop this app that provides a whole slew of tools for mentors to have these sensitive conversations. Next slide. So our app is really built around different modules that are meant to enhance an in-person relationship. So right now, the modules that we have in place are short readings, frequently asked questions, videos modeling how to be a good mentor, especially when talking about sensitive health issues. We have a forum for mentors to chat with each other and sort of compare notes with other more seasoned mentors in the community. And one of the big features of our app is that we provide content for mentors to share with their mentees through social media outlets or through texting, direct messages, whatever the case may be. Some of these other features we are starting to add, such as being able to log mentoring interactions, practicing. We have a very early example of this in our app, but practicing how to have these conversations with young people by using a chatbot. And essentially the chatbot mimics what a young person, how they might respond in being in a topic such as substance use being brought up. And so that's a feature that we're really starting to build out. But what we've been moving towards in our research, and now which is particularly important, is being able to find a mentor virtually and being able to have a meaningful relationship through virtual platforms. Next slide. So in some of my more practice-oriented work, I've been working with the National Mentoring Resource Center in the US to really get a handle on what the best practices are in effective e-mentoring. And so if you're not familiar, we have this Elements of Effective Mentoring Practice guidebook, but recently we released a supplement to this that's focused entirely on e-mentoring. And some of my fellow panelists were part of the working group that put this together, where we've really looked at all of the research that's available, all of the programs that have already been doing this work, and tried to put it into a list of best practices based on what we know right now. But as somebody who does research on this, you were really trying to look for evidence that having digital relationships between a youth and a mentor can be just as effective, maybe in different ways, but just as effective as having an in-person mentoring relationship. Next slide. And so one thing that's really highlighted in that e-mentoring supplement and some of the reports that I've written is that mentoring can actually enhance the mentoring interaction, particularly when you're talking about young people today who are used to communicating through digital means. Sometimes they don't want to have the very important conversations in person. They do much better through chat options or through sharing online content that speaks more to how they're feeling. And if you're talking about mentoring programs, it's very easy if you're using technology-based platforms to provide just-in-time trainings. So for instance, our app allows us to add modules as new topics become important. So for example, right now, we could very easily add a module that focuses on how to talk to your mentee about their concerns regarding the pandemic. And then with technology, obviously, you can refresh content as needed. You can make certain modules available to certain types of mentors who are working with subsets of youth. And there's really a lot of flexibility there. Next slide. And then finally, in terms of the research and evaluation, which is where my work is mostly focused, technology is sort of a playground for those of us who like data. You can access a ton of analytic data. So for instance, if you have a mobile device, you can look at touch points, where are people touching on the screen, which menus are opened most often, which pages are open most often, how often is a piece of content shared. Monitoring data, you can ask your participants in a mobile platform to provide data on a regular basis that you might not be able to if you're only doing phone check-ins or in-person check-ins. So very quickly, you could ask mentors to tell you whether they saw their mentee this week, whether they had a communication with their mentee today, and how they would rate their time with their mentee. And then finally, in terms of text data, if all of the communication between a mentor and a mentee is taking place over a virtual platform, you can actually see what's happening in those conversations. And we can't do this with in-person mentoring. So, using textual analysis, some state-of-the-art computer science techniques, we can really look at where mentors might need more guidance, what sort of conversations might be more effective, strategies around that. And one thing that we're really hoping to do, particularly now, given the slew of programs that are interested in online mentoring, is that we want to look at the qualities of this online interaction through the text that they are sending to each other to see what makes for a strong online relationship. So I'll stop there. Next slide, you have my Twitter handle and my email if you're interested in any of this work. We also have a quarterly newsletter that's focused on how we're using technology and mentoring to affect health outcomes for youth, but happy to answer any questions. Just reach out.
Yeah, thank you, Michelle. And continuing with the research thread, we're going to invite Dr. Kevin O'Neill now to share. Dr. Kevin O'Neill is an associate professor of education and technology at Simon Fraser University. He carried out some of the earliest research on e-mentoring beginning in 1994 and continued his work in various forms for about 15 years. His focus has been on school-based mentoring to strengthen students' understanding of particular disciplines, specifically science and history. Kevin, would you like to unmute your...
Sure.
Unmute your mic and share. Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
All right. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. There are many interesting points of connection as well as contrast between my own work and Michelle's work. The context in which I've been working over the course of my career have been school context largely, as was implied by the introduction. So the context in which I work and design relatively short-lived e-mentoring initiatives are ones in which we're partnered with a number of teachers or with a whole school, and we're focused on how to improve the experience of students studying a particular discipline, especially when they're doing some kind of ambitious long-term project. So a mentor can help them through those and really enhance the initiative that students can take and enhance sort of personalization of the curriculum, if you will. Much of what Michelle said applies to my work as well. So it's been a boon to many of us who are interested in mentoring relationships to be able to study with parent and student permission, of course, the communication that takes place, all of it, between a mentor and a mentee. And there's a whole literature out there. There were some, actually, Judy Harris comes to mind, who've been doing research on school-based telementoring or e-mentoring programs like this, going back, I think, as far as 1992. And if people are interested in that, we might put together a bit of a bibliography, especially for people who are interested in school settings. But some of the things that I've studied have to do with the fundamental dynamics of these relationships and what makes them work well in many instances, but also the challenges they face. For instance, a lot of the work that I've done more recently has been in environments in which every student in a class is matched with a mentor in a group, and but it's in an open environment in which everybody, all mentors and all mentees, can essentially have a peek at what's going on in all of the other relationships. Oh, it looks like my connection might be breaking up. I'm gonna stop now. Yes, I'll be happy to share that bibliography. I'll need to pull it together over the next little while, but happy to be here and looking forward very much to the conversation.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. We don't, it appeared totally fine to me. So we didn't see the breakup, but by all means, we can send the questions afterwards. And thank you for joining us and sharing this perspective. Next on the panel, we'd like to welcome Catherine Legare, the president and founder of Academos. And I would invite Catherine to turn on your video and mic and share with us. And I'll jump to that page. Okay, don't think we're hearing you yet. Just one second.
Okay, hello.
Oh, hello.
I'm
Bonjour.
here. My experience with e-mentoring is both research and practice. In fact, I'm really honored to meet you, Kevin, today because my first contact with e-mentoring was, I think, in 1996 through an article you wrote about classroom e-mentoring. So that was my first contact with e-mentoring. So I've been doing e-mentoring for 20 years now. What you see on the screen is our webpage called Academos. In fact, I we have two web and mobile apps to do mentoring. Academos is the one we use with youth. So with that application, we serve youth from 14 to 30 years old. This mentoring is about career choice. And we have another web and mobile app called Hello, which is more mentoring for adults' career development. So Academos from the start was my doctoral project for in psychology. So I was looking to new ways to work with kids to help them stay in school, find a career project. So, and I was a kind of geekette. So I was interested to work with technology. So I have both sides of my practice as a coordinator myself. And I also did research work on e-mentoring. So my thesis was about the conditions we have to put in place so e-mentoring can happen. And we also made research work about mentors and mentees conversation, looking at the messages. We did research also about the benefits that mentees have with e-mentoring. So across the years, it's been 20 years now, we saw many benefits, and our e-mentoring practice evaluated really much. What you see is the sixth platform we have for e-mentoring. So now we have a mobile app and we have also the web application. For Academos, each year we have 20,000 new youth coming on the platform. Actually, there is more than 100,000 youth that have an account on that platform. And we also have 3,000 mentors across Quebec participating in that program. So they all come from the community. They work in different fields and they give their time to our students. So to refer to Adrian's presentation earlier, we operate a e-mentoring program through an e-mentoring platform with Academos. So everything that is needed to coordinate a program is included in the platform. So we can register our mentors and mentees, train them with just-in-time training, as Michelle talked about earlier. We can evaluate the program inside the platform. We do the matches. We have AI to recommend mentors in a personalized way to each mentee. Communication tools are there. So as a coordinator, we have everything we need to operate that program. So I will stop here for now, and we'll be able to answer the question during the panel after.
Thank you so much for sharing. And just so everybody knows, we're watching the chat, but it's a lot easier for the moderator if you can put all of your questions into the question box, and we'll get to them once we've gone through the presentation. So thank you again, Kitchen, for sharing with us, being with us here today. And I would encourage all of you, if you haven't, you can go to the Academos site and watch some of those movies. They're fantastic. Next up on our panel is Kate Schroeth, and Kate is the executive director of I Could Be. She began her career in social change in 1985 while a college student at Boston University, working on social justice issues affecting low-income communities. In 1991, she co-founded the youth art and entrepreneurship program, Artists for Humanity. After 2 years, she had roles at Harvard and the New School, building entrepreneurial and educational programs with her undergraduate and graduate students. She then moved back to the nonprofit startup world in 2001, serving first as the chair of the board at I Could Be, then as the executive director. Since then, 24,100 youths from low-income communities across the United States have been paired with e-mentors, engaging in more than 305,000 mentoring hours. Developing critical relationship building and networking skills and providing access to new networks of support ensure our mentees have broad webs of support to achieve long-term academic and career success. Kate has focused on developing platform-embedded, structured curricula, assessments, and data science tools that provide real-time outcomes, evaluation, and support to achieve program impact for all mentees. Kate, can you unmute your mic and video?
Hi.
Thank you so much for joining us. And again, New York, I'm sure, is very exciting right now. So we hope that you and your loved ones are safe, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm very happy to be here. And New York is a little crazy right now, but we're all doing the best we can and supporting each other. So yeah, thanks for having me. If you want to jump into the next slide, I can just dive right into I Could Be. So we are 20 years old. We've been in the e-mentoring world for quite some time and have really focused on developing a curriculum on our platform that brings mentees and mentors together and really focus on doing some creative and important work together. We have a very strong focus on increasing social capital. So we know the research is telling us that our students who are growing up in low-income communities and families have far less access and access points to webs of support that can help them reach their goals. And so we had been looking through our embedded pre and post mentee surveys that even with an online mentor, our mentees were starting to invite other people from their day-to-day lives to be their mentors as well. So 2 years ago, we saw a 25% increase. Last year, we saw, 3 years ago, 2 years ago, we saw a 33% increase. So this past school year, we really focused our curriculum on this concept of having an online mentor, building a really solid relationship online with that fully online relationship, and starting to reach out to other people in your day-to-day world to have a really broad web of support. So we can go to the next slide. The way the program works is we partner with schools, we partner with nonprofit organizations, we tailor a program that fits just right for you. The mentees and mentors will both register on the site. They create an avatar, so we have a lot of safety and security features built into the system. One of those is that the mentees do not post photographs of themselves, so we use avatars. It's a fun little tool. Everybody gets registered, And then the mentees actually select their mentors based on their own personal career interests. So they actually invite an adult to work with them. So they get matched, and then they will start working on the activities, which are multimedia activities, videos, all sorts of things. And so the mentor and mentee both go through the check this out part of the activity, where they're really understanding together what the learning objective is. And then they go to a start the conversation and are having a text conversation back and forth for each and every activity. We use text because that's where all of our safety and security filters work. So we ensure that nobody is sharing personally identifying information that would allow mentors and mentees to physically or virtually connect outside of the program where there be no program supervision. We also look for bad language, inappropriate content, so our filters capture it. The intended receiver never sees it. And then we can go through that filter and follow up as appropriate. Ultimately, we're really looking to achieve a couple primary outcomes. So we want to increase self-efficacy for our mentees, and that support from that online mentor and the developing of their web of support helps them make really positive life decisions, and really looking for them to develop career and post-secondary educational aspirations. We can go to the next slide. So this is a peek at our curriculum map. We kind of borrow from the gamification world a little. So we have missions, quests, and then the blue arrow boxes moving to the right are the individual activities that the mentors and mentees work on. There's a lot of content here, but we are really focusing in on some primary themes here about succeeding in school, getting to graduation on time and ready for your next step, pursuing a career vision, so all the career exploration, gaining work experience now. So what are those internships, summer jobs, volunteer opportunities that can really help them explore their future interests, and then prepping for their future and looking at all types of post-secondary opportunities, and then really focused on practicing networking. And if you go to the next slide, within each of those themes, we have these quests that are designed to be mini case studies. So the mentee always starts the case study talking about a challenge or opportunity that they have within that theme. So if they're in the academic success theme, they might, it might be algebra that is their challenge. So they will walk through a case study with their mentor at their side, understanding the challenge, and then working to solve that. So here's an example of our Pursuing Career Vision case study. So the mentees are going to think about careers that they're interested in. Their research challenge will be to go and understand about that career. They're going to start practicing asking their mentor questions and really get comfortable with asking adults questions, asking for advice, and then they will work together on creating solutions for that particular theme. And then they're going to identify 2 people that could help them. So in this theme of career vision, they might not know somebody who's in that career field. It's possible their mentor is in the exact right career field that they're interested in, but it might not be. So how can they start working to find people who are in that career field and get advice from? So they'll identify 2 people, and then we have kind of a mini LinkedIn in our platform, where they can go in this very safe space on I Could Be and look for a mentor who is in that exact career field and start networking with them. So now they're starting to build that network. And at the end of each quest, they'll see the full case study and all the work they put into it. And we can go to the next slide. And then, so they have their full case study here on the left. So they'll have one of those for each of those themes that they complete. And on the right, you see, as they move through the program, where they're identifying 2 people for each of those quests, they will have up to 18 people that they've identified who can help them with a very specific task. So if it's the algebra issue, maybe it's the math teacher and a peer who is getting straight A's in that class. And they will have identified how they can help them, and they'll have reached out to about half of them. So now by the time they leave the program, they are starting to network and develop this whole web of support that they will carry with them post-program and hopefully for the rest of their lives. You can go to the next. So on the back end of the system, this is where e-mentoring and what Michelle was talking about as well. We have a lot of data, and this data really helps us to understand how is each and every single mentee in the program doing. So we built data science tools that help us see this in some very simple data visualizations. So we worked with data scientists for the last 4 years, and we're able to do an analysis on 20,000 mentees, all of their mentors over the past 20 years. And after that's this full analysis, we were able to see that if we looked at 4 data points, added them, weighted them properly, and then added them together on a weekly basis, we can see if a mentee needs to be celebrated for their great job, needs some encouragement or potentially some support in some way, or if they get a red and really need extra support. So you can hit the next slide. So we're doing that on the mentee side as well as the mentor side. And these 4 data points, so did they log on? Did they work in the curriculum? What's the average word count, which is getting at a qualitative nature of the back and forth? How many activities did they complete? That adds up to their score, which will be green, yellow, or red. We do the same on the mentor side, if you hit the next. But we add a couple of data points for the mentors, which get at the relationship development. So did they log on and post that week? Their average word count, all the same, weighted differently than the mentees. But we're also looking at the mentor-mentee activity post ratio. So how often are they going back and forth in each activity, which indicates to us the relationship and the in-depth conversation. So those all get added up. So we're looking at here in the background is an entire cohort of mentees on the left, their match mentors on the right, and now we can see how they're doing together in the match as well as individually. We can go to the next.
Strange, it's not letting me. It appears to be stuck here. Sorry, Kate, just give me 1 second.
Oh, that's okay. No.
We need a test pattern.
Or the elevator music again.
Here we are.
There we go. So, so we can see the cohort view where we just were, and then we can also dive deeper into the actual mentee-mentor relationship view. So this is every single matched mentee and mentor and what has happened each week of the program and who may have intervened at any time. So did the mentee complete a quest that week? Did the I Could Be staff, did the teacher in the classroom, our nonprofit program partner staff, who all kind of contributed on the back end. So you can hover over all of those data points and see what the actual data behind there is and what effect did that have on the mentee score. And based on this information, the program staff can now go and support, celebrate, or encourage that mentee and mentor relationship. So whether it's happening on the mentee side or the mentor side, we now have the data we need to go and provide the mentoring expertise support that every person in the program can always use and can always benefit from. And we can ensure that no mentee is disengaging from the program unbeknownst to us, and same with the mentors. So we can always stay really closely connected to our mentors and mentees and give them what they need. And I think that was it. Oh, and just some outcomes that we've been measuring. So on the left, these are our pre to post program percent changes. So we're seeing really nice improvements that mentees can create a roadmap to reach a desired career, can do research online. They know how to apply for college is up 26%. And then on the bottom, some self-knowledge and self-advocacy improvements. And on the right, we're seeing at the top, we really see how the mentees are feeling about their online relationships. So these are 100% online relationships only. There's not a face-to-face component. We do partner with organizations who do a blended model with us where they're providing the face-to-face and we're providing the online. But these are our fully online students, so how they feel about their mentors and the program itself. And I will stop there.
Thank you so much for sharing. And a couple of questions have come up about us sharing these presentations afterwards. And yes, the slide deck that I have will be provided, and we're going to also translate the slide deck too. So thank you so much. Up next, we're inviting Arundhati Gupta, the founder and CEO of Mentor Together, to join the call. Arundhati, if you want to unmute and show your video, we'll just make sure that's working, and I'll read your bio here. Arundhati is the founder, trustee, and chief executive officer of Mentor Together, India's first and largest nonprofit organization providing mentoring relationships and networks to young people from backgrounds of socioeconomic disadvantage. Arundhati started Mentor Together as a way to pay forward mentorship that she received as a young student in India that helped her discover her passion for social entrepreneurship and youth development. Set up at the end of 2009, Mentor Together's vision is a society where all young people have the equality of opportunity to pursue their dreams and actualize their potential. Under her leadership, Mentor Together has grown to serving over 11,000 young people in 2020 through offices in 5 cities and a pan-Indian network of corporates, university, and nonprofit partners. She graduated with a bachelor's degree in commerce and her master's in finance from the Manchester Business School as a UK-India Commonwealth Scholar. She's also a Brookings Inchinda Scholar, Global Scholar 2020, a World Economic Forum Global Shaper, and an International Youth Foundation Laureate Global Fellow. Arundhati, why don't we show your video first and then we do your slides? Does that work for you?
Yes, that works. And you're able to hear me and see the video, my video, right?
Yes, that's...
Okay, perfect. Yes, the video would be great.
All right, let's make sure.
I came to know about Mentor Together last year. I was given a mentor who lives in Pune and I live in Bangalore. I was worried how it's going to work, and distance never mattered to us.
I had my first call with my mentor in January 2019. So I expected the call to be for 15 minutes, but it went on for 1 hour 15 minutes.
The app was a great thing because meeting the mentee would have been a very tedious process considering the traffic and the distance in Bangalore. Not just me, but even my mentee had a very tight schedule, and meeting him physically would have been really difficult.
I love drawing, but my mentor was not that good in drawing. So she drew something and she just sent it through the app, and we both laughed at the drawing. That made us connect more personally, it made us more friendly.
For an introverted person like me, it was difficult in the beginning because I never used to talk to someone whom I don't know. So in the next call, she gave me good ideas about how to overcome stage fear and how to talk to someone.
The challenge I faced with my mentee is that she believes in superstition. So I suggested her to write down her goals, short-term, mid-term, long-term, in a journal and revisit them every 3 months so that she can focus on what her goals is, where she wants to be in her life.
I joined Mentor to Go in the month of May 2019. Interacting with the new people was so challenging for me because I was from a rural background. I didn't know how to speak with a new person.
Since I come in from a very small town and the mentee that I was assigned also comes in from a very small town outskirts of Bangalore, I could exactly relate my personal experiences with the responsibilities and the mental blocks that come along when you come from a small town and compete with people from cities.
When I opened the app also, there were many stages which surprised me. Few things which improved my communication, my confidence, and it built my network also. I got to know many people whom I actually couldn't think I would know.
In the app, there was a module on communication, which helped us overcome this barrier of public speaking. In addition to this, we also used English reading in front of a mirror as a technique to build that confidence to converse in English.
My mentee Avril was the first person from his family to even go to college. While his parents were extremely proud about it, he was now out of their environment, sitting with a bunch of classmates, where his next challenge was to figure out what he really wants to do in his life. So he went through a bunch of courses on Coursera for a few weeks, and he jotted to starting front-end coding. We began that for a few weeks, and about 2 months, he came and told me another better source for learning coding. That was the point when I was sure that he's become confident to figure his way forward.
My goal is to become successful engineer. Mentor2Go has helped me in both aspects, that is technical and personality development of me.
And I'm very happy to say that my mentee got placed in Harman Tech, and I was very proud when he sent me his offer letter because I valued it even more than my own offer letter when I got placed in the company.
One question we had to answer together was, where do you see yourself 15 years down the line, 20 years down the line? You know, his answer was really eye-opening. He wanted to finish his education, build a career, have a life, and then go back to his rural hometown and just live a life of contentment.
Okay, great. Thank you for playing the video. Can we move to the slide deck itself?
You should see the slide deck now.
I just see that the slide that introduces that it has my name on it.
Oh, 1 second. Let's try this.
Okay, yes, perfect. No, so thank you again, like all the panelists said, thank you to the CMP for setting this up and for inviting us. I think Mentor2Go for us predates a lot of the current situation, but we've had more of a heightened awareness of what the platform could do, and I think these conversations are helping us push ourselves to explore more what we've created can be of use to both, not only our mentees but to others as well. So what you saw is a video on the Mentor2Go app, which is both a mobile mentoring app as well as a web platform that we've built out. This was on year 1 of the program that ran over 2019. The program was created by Mentor Together. That's the organization. And I mentioned the 4 organizations that support us because I think funding for tech in the nonprofit sector could be something that is harder to find. It's a particular niche itself. So we found support through organizations like Cisco, LinkedIn, Sterlite, and British Telecom, and that those may be organizations that have presence in countries that the participants come from as well. So this could help you keep in mind as you think of expanding tech in your programs. So just moving on to the next slide, a little bit about Mentor Together as an organization. Mentor2Go is the name of the program and the app. As an organization, we are a mentoring organization based in India. We work with young people across the age group of 13 to 22. So we start at about high school and then go up to the ages of university, when youth are in university or ready to sort of finish their final tertiary education and move into the workforce. And like many of y'all, we also work with young people who come from a background of some sort of definite social or economic disadvantage. We always say that we focus on both mentoring as a relationship as well as a network, because there's unique power to what both can do. And we sort of look at how mentoring can further the larger vision of equality of opportunity, where young people can access based on their effort and their merit and not by the circumstances of their birth. In terms of what we have done as an organization, so just moving on to the next slide. So we work across 5 cities, and we moved into a mobile mentoring program over the last 2 years. Before that, in the 10 years that we've existed, we were primarily an in-person mentoring program. And through that, we reached about 8,000 young people. And that was our in-person program, which works with young people in schools. And in that program, the program we've run for longer, and we've used all of the great research and evidence that's emerged from countries like America on mentoring to adapt all the models, the curriculum, and we saw a lot of encouraging success in terms of the effects of mentoring that we were seeing in our in-person program. And that led us to a few things led us to experiment with technology more seriously. And that's what led to creating Mentor2Go. I'll explain that in the next slide. First, when we looked at the goal of what we wanted to use technology for, we positioned it very much for the goal of work readiness for youth who are above 18 in our program. This was an extremely important goal because in India, as in many countries, education in itself is not sufficient to help young people prepare for the jobs of the future. And work readiness as India has put more young people into schools and more young people are graduating in general from schools and universities, the idea of preparing them for workplaces became a really important goal. The second thing is that we overall look at the fact that even though young people are gaining access to education, they most often aren't gaining the mobility they need to rise up from the circumstances, whether it's coming from a rural background and having limited access to networks. So that's where we felt again that mentoring could be a really important equalizer. And the other thing that mattered a lot to us, and maybe the case in Canada as well, is that the networks that surrounded young people have changed a lot over the last, say, even half a decade as India has urbanized more. And so many young people were earlier in very traditional collectivist societies where they had a lot of support growing up, whereas now those would be mostly missing because they don't have access to people in person, and it would be much more fragmentation and isolation. So just moving on to the next slide of why we started experimenting with tech. And I think in that sense, Mentor Together is a program that is an in-person mentoring organization that started doing tech, and I'll try to just explain why tech mattered to us and why it could matter to organizations that are thinking about it. The first thing for us was just access. I mean, India doesn't live in the big cities, and we felt that there's only that many young people we could truly reach mentoring to if we focused on just an in-person model, because there would be that many mentors only in a city, and I mean, we wouldn't be able to really expand it beyond the cities. So that was one of the key reasons why, as we grew, we started looking at increasing access, and technology for us meant that there was also a larger shift where Indians, young people could own more technology, not wait until they were in their first jobs, especially mobile phones, and data became something that the government and other private players invested in significantly. So mobile data was extremely accessible. So we felt that this is a once in a lifetime opportunity to make sure that through this technology access that's opened up, we can reach mentoring to more people. The second thing that we wanted to look at seriously was scale of mentoring. We studied both the cost and scale of mentoring extensively in countries like America, where it's proliferated, but if you look at it, the average size of a mentoring program remains very small, and the average cost of mentoring remains high. And for us, we wanted to explore if after our in-person program had matured to a great extent, whether there were certain things technology could do more effectively that could allow us to scale at lower costs. I provided a statistic here, for instance, that in the 2019 cycle of Mentor2Go, which was our first year, we could double the caseload for our teams that work on post-match because we use tech effectively. And the third thing that mattered for us was also increasing the ease for mentors. We felt that in India there were, possibly in any other context as well, there are some significant challenges that prevent people from taking up mentoring as a consistent activity, and also to do it across demographics. We saw a lot of mentors who were younger, but not people in their 30s or 40s, as they had more family commitments, be able to do it. So we felt that a tech-based platform could remove most of the hurdles that they'd face and make sure that they could do it irrespective of what work and family commitments they'd have, because they could take out the time on to do it on the app. So those were some things that that really drove us to investing in tech. So just moving to the next slide, I'll just do a high level of what the platform allows us to do. One thing that's not on the slide deck is that we wanted to do tech that was affordable, that did not involve a lot of proprietary licenses and other things. So we didn't want to build on top of proprietary software. And we also had a vision that if we could build tech and make it accessible and for us, then we could ultimately open it up to many more organizations to use in India and elsewhere in a more accessible way. So we chose to build everything on open source platforms. Our backend is a Django platform coded in Python. Our front end is a native Android app and also a web app. We specifically in the first 2 years chose not to do iOS because the iOS market is extremely small in India. And what we felt is that if we build really robust tech on all of these platforms and then open source it, we were sure that the community would add the other elements to it. So that's been the vision with which we've done the first 2 years entirely of Mentor to Go. There are a few things that specifically the experience allows us to do. The first thing, so just on the previous slide itself, Michael, I'll just spend a minute on that. So the first one is that it allows mentees to come on board and learn skills on their own, give us information about themselves, but also learn skills on their own while they wait for mentors. So we can similarly put in a lot of, like I think Michelle mentioned, and Kate as well mentioned, a lot of activities around what may be relevant topics for mentees to learn and stay engaged on the platform. Using that same module of self-learning, in the next slide, we train the mentors. So mentors come on board and similarly have to get trained on a range of topics. And so we use videos, we use quizzes, we use other sort of interactive elements to help mentors meet the requirements of pre-match training that almost all programs will have. There's also one of the requirements for us in India is, of course, to also have support content across multiple languages. So for instance, currently, other than English, we provide content in 4 other languages for our mentees across India. Moving on, the next sort of experience on the app is a matching profile. So this is driven through data we collect from the users, and we leave and all of this is mobile first, so they can use the app to tell us their preferences. The app finds them matches and then suggests them to the mentee to choose and request from the mentor. And then once the mentor accepts the program itself begins. And then moving to the next slide, we've again found value in structuring, in probably finding the sweet spot of structure, because we've seen that mentoring has to be a relational developmental activity, but with the relevant sort of scaffolding to make sure that certain goals are met. So we have created curriculum and prompts, but that's left up to the mentor and mentee to some extent. We haven't overly structured it, and they get to do activities on the app and use that time asynchronously when they have free time on the app to do it themselves, and then decide when they want to do calls and other more interactive communication synced up. So all of that is another element on the app when they move into mentorship. And then the last piece that we're building out, which came from our year 1 feedback, if we move to the next slide, is that we saw value in creating real world opportunities for the mentees to use through the mentor network. So we're hosting internships and work experience opportunities for mentors and mentees in the program this year, and curating that from the network itself. So just moving on to the next slide. What we saw in the first year of our implementation, and a few things that really were interesting for us. So one, we saw, like I mentioned, a much larger volume of applications. We had about 3,500 in year 1. Our average mentor that we selected had 10 years of work experience. And we had across the mentor group about 170 professional organizations represented through the mentor network. So we just realized that in the diversity of the mentor pool, this was unparalleled compared to our in-person programs. There was just that many more people who were able to say yes to doing the program because it was on tech. Just moving to the next slide.
Not sure why that's stuck here again.
Sure, sure. No, I think there's just a couple more slides. So if it doesn't go through, that's fine. I'll find a way to. There was actually just one more slide. So maybe in the interest of time, it was just about what our plans were for this year. So we continue to run Mentor to Go through a sort of hub and spoke model where we use our city-based locations as hubs to work in the city and in the peri-urban areas to find students. We work actively with a network of universities and colleges that help us identify the mentees, at targeting students from lower income backgrounds. We work with corporates to identify the mentors through their internal networks. And essentially over 2020, we're looking to bring on about 10,000 mentees onto the app and curating about 2,800 matches. So the platform is meant to engage mentees even outside of mentoring, where we think that mentoring and internships may be what we can tier as the more intensive experiences, and in some sense with some rewards for mentees to do. And we use the self-learning for mentees to engage on the app even before or if they don't want the mentor. So that's how we've sort of designed the overall app experience on Mentor to Go, and their details as well as a link to the Android app if you're interested in exploring. You can explore it as a mentor. On the mentee side, it does require an institution code on the production app, which you may not have at this point. Yep, that's it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for all of our panelists today sharing and for being with us. And I feel like it was really helpful to get a sense of how the different platforms have worked. And I feel like I've learned a lot in this journey together today as well. Adrian, would you like to take the mic again and bring us back to the CMP journey?
Mic taken. Hi, folks. First of all, thank you all to all the panelists. That was great. It was, as you can imagine, people that specialize in virtual and e-mentoring are in demand these days. So in particular, thanks in these specific times for making time for this. I'm going to take a minute just to answer a few of the questions that have come up that I think are pretty pertinent, and maybe we can fire off quickly, and a few general considerations about mentoring systems. So first of all, there have been a number of questions about security. Security is a bit of a moving target, and it depends a lot on the type of program that you want to implement online. So security can run the gamut from integrated background checks and police screenings, vulnerable sectors checks, through doing the type of stuff offline and only allowing people to create accounts or be admitted into a program once they have been vetted offline. That can involve whatever a program traditionally does in in-person mentoring relationships. Or if some platforms have specific technologies that they bring to bear on managing the induction process for mentors and mentees. There's other elements of a more technical nature related to security, and those include concepts like encryption that we're all familiar with. So encrypting communications end to end. Also, where data is stored is an important consideration when contemplating a platform. There are different privacy laws and rules and regulations depending on your jurisdiction. Then security also involves security and safety online. It kind of can go along a bunch of different lines. So one is really related to training. Some of the abusive behaviors or predatory behaviors that people can be concerned about involve blurring of boundaries or start with blurring of boundaries. So it's very important to develop training and materials when moving into an online space for both staff and mentors and mentees so that people can participate in this space in a safe way. Now, I know that some of our panelists will have a lot to say about security and about behaviors online and about contextualizing the security challenges that exist in a cyberspace. So I'll, in a moment, turn it back over to them to dive into this stuff a little bit further. But it is something that is top of mind for most practitioners, and a lot of work has gone into trying to understand what the threats are. On another note, Kate, I see you now. There are a couple of questions in the Q&A. If you wouldn't mind popping in there, if you don't feel like answering them live, you can answer them directly. I think they might be pretty quick answers. And to the other panelists, if you keep an eye to the Q&A section, there's stuff that may be related to you. There have been a couple of questions related to CMP's platform. It's not our platform. That's an interesting thing. Maybe I didn't phrase things properly. We're looking to deliver or increase access to online mentoring tools. Now, the manner in which that is going to happen is not TBD. We're in high-level talks with people, with existing platform providers and service providers to see what can be adapted to the Canadian context in a short time and meeting a couple of key criteria, like specific security features that exist, particularly like what Kate described or like Catherine at Academos described, the ability, at least within chat-based systems, to intercept certain types of discourse and prevent that from being exchanged, flag it, and intervene. Now that, of course, raises concerns and questions about whether or not the interaction between mentor and mentee are private. Well, that depends on the type of implementation and the options that are chosen by the program in moving forward with a given platform. And I encourage people who want to know more about this stuff or who are interested in the answers to these things to join the work group so we can flesh this out in more detail, but they have been considered and there are answers to them. It just may be a little bit out of scope for the present conversation, but they're excellent questions. There are other questions related to accessibility, and this one, if you're going to pay attention to one particular question, this one is an interesting one. So one thing about moving online that is a little tricky is that when you move a program that was in person to an online space, we have to be certain, or not certain, but we have to keep in mind the idea that some people simply don't have access to the technology that enables online connection. That may be either because they don't have an appropriate internet connection. If they were gonna access the internet to use an online service, they might have to resort to doing that through publicly available resources in a community center or library. In those cases, the internet connection or their access to the technology that facilitates online meeting may not provide sufficient privacy for them, depending on the type of program that is being implemented online. And in this time of social distancing, it simply may not be possible for that to happen. So it may not be in some limited circumstances, but still possibly very critical ones, moving online may not be a cure to social distancing or access problems. So we have to contemplate accessibility, particularly technological accessibility, carefully. Other questions about accessibility have to do, and they were brought up, there's a question in the Q&A now about literacy and numeracy. Those also lead into questions about particular types of disability, whereas online or virtual technologies can allow for remote connection for people who have mobility impairments. They also present barriers depending on how the technology is implemented for people who have different types of disabilities, such as visual or auditory problems. So we have to be cognizant of that. Part of this can be addressed through the technological choices that are made, making sure that the tools are adaptable to screen readers for people who have visual impairments, and that for systems where we're looking to connect people synchronously, that there's both chat and video to accommodate modes of communication related to other impairments. So numeracy and literacy can be a common, or innumeracy and illiteracy to some degrees might be able to be accommodated for depending on the use of adaptive technologies, but that's going to be a challenge, plainly, especially in a context like this where we're trying to accelerate deployment. Unfortunately, at least initially, we're looking at probably aiming at the, in a normal distribution, the middle of the curve. And that's unfortunate for a first iteration, but it's something that we are absolutely going to address as we have time to build out this platform. So remember, we're aiming at a base platform and something that enables connectivity in a shorter turnaround time. We're not looking to make the perfect connecting tool, and we're also not looking to reinvent the wheel. But there are definitely certain considerations, like delivery of a platform bilingually, both the user interface and the content, and the ability to provide both a secure chat system and visual, so video conferencing connections, and providing the ability to administer the matching of, particularly in one-on-one relationships, by a program administrator. Also the ability to audit those communications and make sure that we are able to sample them to verify that, again, understanding that the program has to make it clear that this is part of the confidentiality considerations of the online program. We want to make it clear that there will be capabilities for people, program administrators, to audit communications between mentor and mentee, depending on configuration, so that we can be more certain that what's the word I'm looking for? Not predatory behavior, but questionable behavior is at least flagged. So these are some of the concepts. I'd like to turn it over now to Michael to go through the Q&A. Please add your questions to the Q&A, and Michael will ask them live to the panelists. And of course, if anybody has something to add, jump in.
I'd be interested in if the panelists would like to respond to what Adrian shared, but we have a question here from Joel asking about how technology helps foster some of the generative mechanisms of successful mentoring relationships, trust, creating safe spaces to share, respect, etc. Just thinking about how technology affects the most fundamental aspects of mentoring relationships. Maybe is this something either Michelle or Kevin, you want to start with from the research perspective, and then maybe we could go to Kate Kitchen and Aaron Duty with the program perspective. Michelle, are you still with us?
I am, yes. So there's a whole psychology literature on how interpersonal relationships are built using technology, and a lot of psychologists have focused on these romantic relationships, through dating apps and whatnot. But I think a lot of the same principles apply to mentoring relationships. It's very possible for youth and adult mentors to engage in typical relationship actions that build intimacy and trust, right? So revealing things about themselves, sharing mutual experiences, asking follow-up questions, so you might not be engaged in active listening as we like to think about it in terms of an in-person interaction, but there are certainly ways through text that you can clarify as a mentor what you're hearing from the young person, ask the right questions, respond to things in a non-judgmental way. And all of these things can work to improve the strength of a relationship.
Kevin? Kevin O'Neill, did you want to supplement? we might have lost Kevin. Katrin, do you want to speak to the relationship piece?
Yes, both from research and practice. From research, we did a research a few years ago to compare relationship particularities. We were comparing e-mentoring to counseling, and we took some behaviors from counseling, an already existing set of behaviors. And the main finding we had about e-mentoring was that, of course, mentors were sharing more of their experience, I don't know how to say it in English, but they were sharing their lives, and counselors did not do that. So the conclusion was that in e-mentoring, we still had the opportunity to share life experiences, share like real life things, and it wasn't a difference between traditional mentoring and e-mentoring, and but there was a big difference between counseling and e-mentoring. The other part is what we do in our program. This year, we had a special project about intergenerational relationships that was funded by the government of Quebec. We, like 2 years ago, with the data we had, we were concerned about the fact that our mentors who were 50 years and up were less contacted. They had less matches than mentors, younger mentors, and their relationships also were shorter. So we were asking ourselves, how come did we have that problem? Students were more likely to go to younger mentors, like 25 years old, 30 years old. So we saw discrepancies in the means of communication between mentors and mentees, like their behavior with digital tools, their ways to communicate, use emojis, and just the pace of the relationship was the expectations were not the same for students than for adults. So we did a series of videos about intergenerational communication. So we had that were the videos about who are our youths, how to communicate with technologies, how to send impactful messages to youth. So that's why it's important also in a choice of technology to choose a technology that is suited for youth, because youth are not using the technology the same way as adults. So we have to take that in consideration when building tools, and also if you have to choose one.
Yeah. No.
I hope this is clear.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, and I think a helpful consideration too. Mm-hmm. Kate, did you want to share?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, so I think anecdotally what we find with our students is the technology is offering them this very level playing field to ask the questions and find information that they want. And it allows them to be a driver in the mentoring relationship. I don't think they are often feel that necessarily if they were, for example, in a face-to-face program, maybe to go to their mentor's office, or, you know, and the older teenagers often tell us that they don't need another person telling them what to do in their life. So that the technology seems to give them the space to be their authentic selves, ask the questions they really want to know the answers to, and engage in a way where they are a primary driver of this relationship. So it removes a lot of the barriers that sometimes we can find in adult and young people relationships. And then we've done a couple of research projects where we were looking at the increasing the self-efficacy side of the equation. And what we saw there, so I think our sample size was about 1,500 mentees. And we wanted to, so we used like the hope scales as kind of this measurement to ask the mentees, you know, do you have someone in your life that is a mentor, or, you know, you can really go to when you need support and help? Do you know, are you going to graduate from high school? Are you going to graduate on time? And as we asked those questions, and we saw a large percentage of our mentees were answering, no, I don't know, I don't have anybody, I don't care about graduating. So the students who were scoring really low on those hope scales, those, so we saw improvements in self-efficacy for all of our mentees, but it was those students who just went off the charts by the end of the program. And that really started telling us something about this leveling of the playing field in this online space, where students were really connecting and feeling empowered. And we saw kind of the same thing as we were measuring kind of their career aspirational development. The social scientists who designed the study really saw that the students were not only were they developing these aspirations for careers, but they felt like they had the support and the tools and the new research skills to continue to persist in working towards those goals, even post-program. So that was, you know, those were just some of the findings that we're seeing kind of on those fronts.
Yeah, and Kevin, I saw you wanted to chime in as well too.
Sure. I think one of the things that we are seeing from across the panel is that there's a very healthy variety of program types and goals that are being pursued across the field, and that's terrific because there's a great diversity of needs. One thing that I was going to mention is that early on in my research, since the original question was about developing relationships and how technology might help, early on, one of the things I noticed was that students who didn't have a very rich idea of high school students who didn't have a very rich idea of what a mentoring relationship could do for them would not invest very much effort to develop that relationship, or might not know how. In environments where you're seeking to develop a very deep, intimate relationship, what I'm about to suggest wouldn't be appropriate. But in some of the program models that I've explored, where every mentee and every mentor can see what every other mentee and every other mentor are doing, it makes it possible for our students who typically might have conversations in the classroom. Oh, your mentor did this for you. My mentor didn't do that for me. Why not? They can actually look at the text of those discussions and they can say, oh, your mentor did that for you because were very clear and detailed about what your needs were in a way that I wasn't, right? So they can look inside well-functioning mentoring relationships and they can emulate them. There are different ways to do this, but one way is through training and trying to develop upfront or just in time the sense that mentors and mentees have of how the relationship ought to function. But we can also make it possible in some contexts for mentors and mentees to do this work for themselves.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Kevin. I realize we're at 10 minutes to the hour, and we booked everybody for 2 hours, so I want to be respectful. But I think maybe we've heard a lot about the opportunities, the potential. We've seen some great visualizations of the impact that the work has had too. But you would be not surprised to hear that sometimes we hear about the challenges, and in particular concerns about safety online, child safety protection, abuse prevention, safe boundaries, in particular updating protocols, practices, etc., to make sure that this risk analysis takes place. So I was wondering if we could go through and think about a little bit, or can we hear from you how you have addressed some of maybe the risks of e-mentoring compared to in-person mentoring, and just think about that, because we know there's many people on the line who are concerned about that and are thinking about their own local adaptations. So maybe Arundhati, we didn't hear from you on the last one. Would you be able to share how you've addressed concerns?
Yes, sure. And so one of the things which if it didn't come out during the presentation, we've made a specific choice about the access to the platform for us being only to youth above 18. And we wouldn't run the program and allow our e-mentoring programs to happen with anyone who is not legally an adult. And those are specifically keeping in mind just the maturity of of how much access, the maturity of our tech systems itself in India in terms of how people use them and the general protocols and practices, because this is something that is a lot more nascent and evolving in India, where our mentees may be, or not even our mentees, maybe the next generation may be digital natives and not others. So for us, that's been one choice, and that will continue to being a policy of ours as a strict requirement. The second thing that we do is that in terms of the mentors, I think there were questions about how much do we screen the mentors. So all mentors have to give us all of the demographic and other data that we usually collect in other in our in-person as well. They come through most of them come through our corporate partners who have signed up with us as a program level before they've made the opportunity available to their employees. So there's also sense of how they have vetted and done background checks. So those are some things that we also collect ID proofs from people. So those are some things we've done to safeguard and check on identity, but we don't have any other inbuilt third-party sort of background check, which I'm very interested to learn from other programs on.
Yeah. Kevin, do you want to comment on this from the research perspective?
I don't know that I have a specific comment based on research, but I see the question in the Q&A box. I've certainly never run a program where mentors were not checked, both a criminal records check and an identity check beforehand. We also took personal references in which we asked not only confirmed that the person was who they said they were and worked where they said they worked, but we asked their references, do you think that your acquaintance would be good at this?
Right.
So I think that's kind of a minimum standard. And then both program staff and, in our case, because we're working with schools, teachers have access to all the communication that's taking place between mentors and mentees at all times. So I think that also helps to tamp down inappropriate behavior, because it's understood that whatever is said can be spotted very quickly.
Right. And how about you, Michelle? And in particular, the under 18 group.
Yeah. So this might be controversial to say, and it's not to say that all of those background checks and procedures put in place, they are important. However, I think the concern about children being victimized in online spaces is often sensationalized. We know from research that children are most likely to be exploited by people they know in person that are close to them on a fairly regular basis. And so, while there are people who do try to take advantage of children on online spaces, it often isn't as common as media and and other outlets might lead us to believe.
Yeah. And Katrina, I saw you raised your hand as well too. How do you, could you share your perspective?
Yeah, I will complete Kevin and Michelle. What we do at Academos is identity check and also professional references. But I want to focus on what we put in place inside the application for security, because it's okay to do security or background check, but what we want to do is to be able to see if there is a real problem in a match or in a relationship. So we have like a 3-level system. The first system, I think that Kate talked about something like that earlier, is like it's like a filter with all the words you can imagine a teenager can say. So this filter really blocks the communication that was sent to the mentor or the mentee. So there is someone at in the Academos team who checks those messages. Because we work with minor youth, we apply that system to everybody in the platform. So youth cannot share their coordinates, same thing for the mentor. They cannot share phone number, email. So we have to check and approve those messages. After that, there is a report system in the application. So anytime a youth or a mentor has a problem with a communication, it's not comfortable, it's aggressive, it's anything, they can easily report that conversation so we can intervene. And the last thing we do is that we do human checks also. We do those checkups particularly in long relationships. So we kind of read between the lines what's going on in a relationship. Of course, everybody knows that before being in the program. We have a code of conduct that specifies that we can look at the conversations. So someone who wants to do something wrong with the youth, they are better to do this elsewhere than Academos, because what we look every day is really intense.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Kate, would you like to share as well?
Sure. So yep. So I think the background check in the front end, the filters in the middle. We also have a tool for mentors. So if they are getting any information from their mentee that the mentee might be in trouble or need support, emergency letters go out to everybody involved in that mentee's participation. And then we also have email notifications that go out to senior leadership, program teams, should any of those scary words start popping up. So we get a lot of those. They're 99.9% of the time are fine. But we are checking, like we just have to check everything all the time. So those 3 systems are just constantly working in the background. And then like everybody else, you can go in and spot check and see every word that was communicated back and forth.
Yeah, no. Adrian, I'm mindful of the hour, the last minute. Would you like to close and offer comment?
I would, just because, I like talking. Again, thanks to the panelists. It's getting, I'll stop saying that at some point now, probably. Security is a complex question. Again, there are other considerations related to behaviors that lead to that boundary blurring, and we didn't get a good opportunity yet because of the time constraints to get into those concepts. But I think one of the points that Catherine made is really, really key. There are a few things that we are able to do using digital systems that we're not all able to do in in-person systems. And I think Michelle and Kevin also kind of indirectly alluded to this stuff. You can nod if you agree or disagree, but critically, if you see that a relationship is evolving, just like when you're doing a financial audit and you have to pick the number of times that you review different types of transactions, you take the really big ones and you want to sample a large percentage of the very big transactions to make sure that they're done and recorded properly or above board. And then as that decreases, the sampling rate decreases. So using a bit of statistical thinking, we can get to a place where when we contemplate an online platform, we can realize that there are ways to flag relationships that are getting longer and more intimate, and therefore potentially have a greater opportunity for things to go sideways, and be more mindful of looking at those relationships and sampling those interactions and verifying that the relationship is evolving properly or within bounds. There are also, like Catherine and Kate systems, implement ways of catching terminology and stuff that indicates risky behavior that we can't do in the in-person environments. We also have the ability to implement storage of the interactions that happen through the digital platform to filter out the exchange of contact information, and then to be able to sample and look at even video recordings. And those are things that can't always happen in an in-person setting because matches may meet anywhere, in a park. There are also questions about supervision and group mentoring, which we haven't addressed or gotten into. The conversation seems to have floated more around in-person or sorry, one-on-one relationships. But those are also things that we need to talk about. So again, I encourage people to sign up to the working group where we're going to be contemplating in more concrete terms how deployment works and what types of boundaries and options are going to be made available to service providers, mentors, and mentees for interacting, and the different configurations that can be applied to different programs to mitigate some of the concerns around privacy and security. And so that I also, as a last note, would like to point out to the people still in attendance that we're about to, or in the near future, we'll be releasing, unless Michael, you correct me, and we have released it, an issues brief on e-mentoring with some more research related.
Just going through translation, it'll be out very soon.
Oh, there you go. And we'll have that available to people, like Michael said, very soon. If you sign up to the newsletter, I know it's annoying to receive newsletters, but if you do sign up to it, at least for the next week or two, you'll get a link to that, and it might be relevant to people. Anybody else with closing remarks?
Just thank everybody again. I think we might cut off in a few minutes here. We might have gone over time. Thank you so much. info.cmp@mentoringcanada.ca. As I said in the chat, if you need to reach out. I'm sorry to the folks if we missed your question. We hope this, as I said, is the beginning of, again, another very engaging conversation for future. I'm sharing the working group information into the chat box as well, too. It'll be going out in our aftercare package. So thank you again so much to the panelists. Just tremendously informative, even for those of us who work in the field, learn something new every day. So thank you so much for joining us. Again, apologies to our Francophone friends that we couldn't get that feature working. We're going to be testing it afterwards, and hopefully by the next webinar in 2 weeks on research, we'll have that live and ready to go. So thank you again so much to everyone, and stay safe, stay healthy, stay inside, social closeness, physical distance. Thank you all so much. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you all.